Just a cool, quick mini case study here on Iceland Gull wingtip patterns, made entirely possible by Lambton County, Ontario birders Matt Parsons and Daryl Nethercott for uploading their awesome photos to eBird. So this was more interesting to birders back in the day when Thayer's gull was its own species, but the challenge and the situation is sort of laid bare by lumping Thayer's gull into Iceland gull and having them be subspecies, where birders ask themselves, where do we draw the line in identifying the two subspecies? One feature people often look at is the primary pattern. On a Kumlian's gull, you expect it to be more gray, perhaps the 10th primary with lots of white. And then as you move down the primaries towards the 5th primary in particular, there's usually little to no markings. Whereas on a Thayer's gull, you like to see lots of black, clearly marked primary mirrors or open mirrors. And especially down towards that 5th primary, it's often cited that you'd like to see a nice dark band that stretches across that whole feather. That's all fine and dandy, but it's always been a bit of a curiosity of mine to consider the fact that third-year gulls or even second-year gulls are often known to have more extensive and darker black markings in their primary pattern. And I've always sort of wondered how that might apply to Iceland gull. Which brings us to this crazy bird that Matt and Daryl have managed to get photos of over consecutive winters as a 3rd, 4th, and presumably 5th year plumage. It's an Iceland gull. It's sort of quirky in its distinctiveness. It's kind of weird to have a pale eye, but such black markings in the wings. And by looking at these photos and being able to identify the same quirky bird over multiple years, it actually gives a chance to see how the primary pattern has changed as it got older. There aren't a lot of dramatic changes, but I do think it's really interesting to see that the bird in its 3rd winter plumage went from having a black mark near the tip of the 10th primary and a dark band across all of the 5th primary to have essentially having almost entirely lost both of those features 2 years later. So that does sort of make me believe there might be a bit of a bias, especially locally in the Great Lakes where we get Kumlians and Thayer's gulls fairly similar numbers, to having 2nd, 3rd, 4th year birds that trend more on the Thayer side of things, but might grow up to be more sort of intermediate or Kumlians type birds. Both of these 3rd winter photos are birds that I have on eBird labeled as Thayer's gulls, so it's kind of interesting to consider how much they maybe changed once they became adults. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Just for fun, I went back the 2 previous winters to see if I could find the same bird. In 2021, there was a juvenile 1st winter Thayer's type gull that hung around Sarnia in the same area for a long time. So I think it's definitely possible it's the same bird, but it's kind of impossible to say for sure. So just never know. Need to put bands on the legs of these things. But yeah, that's it. Just to wrap it up, I'm going to shout out that putting your stuff on eBird or iNaturalist is a great way for people to find these sort of connections or to learn from the cool birds that you're able to document. And also that, the Great Lakes Bird Study Group Discord was sort of the place where this came together, just by chatting and sharing photos. A link to that can be found. The website here, it's in the top somewhere. You'll find it. I'll post a link. And yeah, hope you have some great winter gulling out there.